my first meet, I was scared.
I think society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me.
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
I'm sort of scheduled to, so I went to the garage. I've got an ex.
Shh. I closed my eyes. I was crying so hard. And all of a sudden, he was there.
It was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
I am a human being and I killed human beings.
Dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Profiler Africa. My name is Paul Llewellyn. We are back again. Apologies for the break in transmission last week, but you know, it's the end of the year and everything's a little bit crazy and busy and wrapping up projects and making sure that everything is sorted for the Christmas period so we can relax and stride confidently into the new year. Tonight, of course, I am once again joined by my co-host, Gerard Labuschagne. There he is in extreme close-up. Hi, Gerard. There we go. Let's just remind everyone how to spell your name. There we go. Of course, so joined once again by Gerard. And tonight we are going to be talking, well, pretty much sitting back and letting Gerard teach us all a little bit about being an expert witness and what it takes to be in a courtroom. And some tips and tricks and the ins and outs and all of that. But first of all, if you are a first-time viewer of the show, please do hit subscribe. You can also, if you click the bell, it'll remind you of when we are, or let you know when we're posting new episodes. And you're also welcome to become a member. You can also buy us a coffee. I'll just pop the link on here. There we go. So please feel free to contribute to the show. All right, Gerard, how's it going?
Not too bad. Thank you very much to everybody. I was telling you before I started, which I think is pretty cool news. I actually went to watch a Dave Chappelle concert. What do you call a concert? What do comedians have? Concerts? Shows?
Yeah.
On Sunday night. So that's one of the benefits of living overseas. You get to do stuff like that every now and then, which is quite fun.
Exciting. And we're going to say hi to everyone joining us on the chat. Lauren, Tanya, and we've got to pop this one up straight away. I'll do that in a second. But Purple Fish, good evening. So, Gerard, how's the weather? Like, I tell you what, you were also just talking about before we came online, and I know we shouldn't talk about the weather because it's like the most mundane thing to talk about. But you were just commenting on the fact that, like, in Canada, when it's not raining, it's like a sunny day. It's like a summer's day. Everyone's out. Everyone's happy. The mood is lifted. Well, I feel kind of the same like that in Joburg at the moment because it has just been raining nonstop every day, all day. If it's a blessing, then this is going to be a very blessed Christmas. What else have you been up to? How's work? How's it all going, getting adjusted?
Work has been good.
Anything exciting happening?
So still working on workplace risk assessment cases. So that's typically an employee typically has done something or said something that's raised people's concern for their safety. And now the employer needs to know, what do we do with this guy? Do we have to worry about what do we think this person might do? To whom, to when, how soon, how dangerous would that be? What can we do to prevent that from happening? Is it safe to keep this person in the environment? Sometimes people just need a bit of help to get back on track. And that's kind of what a lot of the work that I'm doing. So it's more like a risk assessment than a threat assessment. Risk assessment because it's a bit long term. You know, you're going to do this over a period of 2 weeks, interview people, look at documentation, versus a lot of the corporate threat assessment stuff which is like, hey, one of my employees just got a death threat from a customer because he turned down his policy claim. What do we do? It's more hot, active, on the go. You have little information about the person who's made the threat. You have to operate and make decisions on little information. So it's quite two different worlds. In addition to that, we do a lot of training of people how to use different instruments to assess, from stalking to intimate partner violence to group violence to honor-based violence to normal violence, what other kinds of violence do we look at, sexual violence, etc. So we do a lot of training in people to use those tools that this company has developed, and these are used like throughout the world. I mean, from California Corrections to the NHS, National Health Service in England, to Australia, Singapore, US, from corporates to schools to healthcare facilities are all kind of using their instruments. So it's quite nice that, you're working for a very reputable company that has a good reputation in developing these instruments. So basically training, learning how to training other people. We did a week-long course in Calgary. That's where it was sort of very snowy. On, how to advanced course on threat or risk assessment, how to do a case, obviously, but also then how to present that into a courtroom environment, to draft reports, to present that to people, to drafting short reports, to doing oral feedback, etc. So it's kind of like the expert side of, once you've done your work, how you convey that to other people, which is kind of related to what we're talking about today.
How are you finding kind of being in, and I want to put this delicately, like a less criminal environment? Are you finding that like people are in awe of you, and you're it's like, here comes Gerard. He deals with serious shit.
No, to be honest with you, most people here have no idea what I did. Unless it's like friends that I've known for a number of years, they obviously have an idea about my previous life, my profiling life. But most people, it's just like they have no idea. And in some ways, that's kind of fun. You're starting over. You don't have that history. But in some cases, you do kind of feel it was a part of my identity. So you kind of feel like part of my identity is gone. So it's nice, and it's kind of like unsettling, but maybe in a positive way. So,
well, every Tuesday night you still get to reconnect with your fans and your admirers. So there we go. We're keeping our weekly window open. And, guys, that we're going to be, doing some shows for over the Christmas period. I think we will be taking a bit of a break as well. But we have yet to ascertain if we'll do enough pre-records to kind of carry us through the holiday period. It has been a difficult end to the year because I've mentioned it once or twice. But, we have been going through this legal thing, and I was just saying as well that pretty soon I think I'm going to have more experience in a Canadian court than you, Gerard, because the last 2 months I've been learning how to be a Canadian lawyer, and tell you what, it's been taking up a heck of a lot of my time.
Yeah, I was saying earlier to the listeners that if we get of you guys, because you've done the work on this, if you get this right, I mean that'll be worthy of an episode of Profiler Africa.
Considering we're a crime podcast, we're going to do a whole month's series. That's granted there's not like a massive NDA or anything, which there probably will be. But you'll know if I've signed an NDA because I'll be on a beach somewhere. Anyway, you won't be able to find me or Amy. Anyway, I wanted to first of all say thank you before we get into the topic, because it's a good segue talking about Canadian courts and courts in general into tonight's show. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Purple Fishish for contributing to the show. If you'd like to drop us a super like throughout the chat, you're welcome to. And please do drop your questions. We'll do like a general Q&A towards the end. So any of those questions that have been rolling around in your head that you're dying to ask Gerard, line them up in the chat. I've also pulled some past questions from the chat that's been happening on the YouTube page as well. Yeah. And if we've got time, we'll jump on those. But hopefully we'll just fill it up with all your questions for the end.
And also, I see Purple Fishes in Denmark. I'm always curious to know, like, are our listeners from overseas people, to use that very crude way of putting it, or is it South Africans who are overseas? That's always interesting to see where South Africans have gone to. I know we've had some in Vancouver, South Africans. Obviously your mom, she's from the UK. So it's so interesting to see if it's a South African or just other people, because it's interesting to see how news about the podcast, our video call, what do you call it, vodcast, gets out there to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we get to give you a weather update from all over the world because it's humid in Ballito. They're having a drought in Knysna. It's cold and wet in Wales. And it's wet and cold in Denmark too. So most of us, where have we got? At least it's raining a bit today, but Lauren had a bit of rain. So there you go. Now that the weather is covered, let's jump into tonight's discussion. Okay, the small talk is out of the way. So, yeah, we were talking about courts, and you are going to give us a bit of a lesson tonight on what it takes to be an expert witness and some of your experiences and anecdotes from around the courtroom. We're unpacking what TV gets completely wrong a lot of the time, what it actually means to testify as an expert witness. So let's start simple, Gerard. What is an expert witness, and why do people mix it up with being a fact witness?
Yes. So what you have to understand, I mean, TV doesn't always convey it, crime shows, because they don't necessarily always go into the details of the trial part. But if you don't have witnesses at a trial, you don't have a case. If you don't have the victim to testify about what was done to them, obviously murder case aside, but in most other cases, an assault or rape, if you don't have a complainant to come forward who's going to testify, you don't have other witnesses who are going to corroborate what they saw and experienced, and you don't have maybe an expert who's going to come and testify about a piece of DNA evidence, you don't have a case to go to trial with. So giving evidence is the cornerstone of getting someone guilty and putting them in jail for a crime they've committed. So this is kind of the starting point of our discussion, and what are the differences between, and there's a big difference between a normal witness who saw a crime occurring and someone who's going to come and testify about DNA or some other expertise like a forensic pathologist. So we have to start off with, what is a fact witness? And sorry if I'm looking up because I'm just checking my notes. A fact witness is really somebody observed something that the court has to decide upon. So in a criminal case, we'll just keep it for a criminal case because that's the easiest one. If you're standing on a street corner and you see a car go through a red light and crash into someone and hit a victim, and the driver gets out and stumbles away, and a whiskey bottle rolls out from the front seat as he opens his door. So what the court is wanting from you is to be like a CCTV camera, and because you don't work like that, it's your brain, it's your memory. It's basically tell us what you saw, tell us what you heard, tell us what you smelt. Tell us what you've experienced through your senses. And that's all we want from you. So we want you to say, I saw the light was red for the vehicle. I saw it. I heard the engine revving, and I saw the car fly through the red robot, and I heard the tires screech, and I smelt the smoke of the tires. I heard a woman scream, and I heard a thud, and I saw the woman fly into the air. The guy stumbled. They want you to relate everything that happened, so that the court can ultimately make a decision, give an opinion about the set of facts. What the court doesn't want from you is, for example, if the lawyer jumped up and said, do you think the guy was going too fast? Now you're being asked to give your opinion. And the court will say to you, no. You are a fact witness. You are the tape recorder, press play, and just recount what happened. We don't want your opinion. Because, as they say, opinions are like, what's a polite way of putting it? Elbows. Everybody has one.
There you go.
So your opinion is not more valid than the next person's opinion. Saying, I don't think he was speeding. So we have a battle of opinions of lay people, which is not helpful to the court. The court will make up its own final opinion or decision. So even theoretically speaking, if you were what's a famous racing driver? What's his name? Lewis Hamilton?
Nigel Mansell.
This is Lewis Hamilton. Nigel Mansell, Lewis Hamilton. If you were the guy standing on the street corner.
That's the last time I watched Formula One, sorry. Yeah.
So if you were that guy standing on the street corner who witnessed this, even you wouldn't be able to give your opinion. Although you have super great expertise in this area and racing and cars and speeds, etc., they would say to you, you're here as a fact witness because you're here because of what you saw. So we will get another expert, an accident reconstruction expert, to testify about the presumed speed the vehicle was traveling, looking at all the information, any CCTV footage, etc., etc. So you have to be careful not to jump from being a fact witness into trying to give an opinion. And if you do it yourself, they'll stop you. Both lawyers would probably stop you, and the judge would probably stop you. And if the prosecutor or the defense try to sneak in your opinion, I'm guaranteed the other side would say, no. You're not here as an expert witness to give your opinion. And that's basically the thing. So you're really just there as a tape recorder. Now, of course, memory is fallible. We've seen this we know that memory is not an exact replica of what happened. It's changed through just the passage of time. We forget certain things. It changes through the influence of other people, what other people say, which is why a fact witness is never allowed to be in the courtroom prior to them testifying in the same room where the court has been. You can sit outside, obviously, that's often you're told to wait outside for your turn. You're not supposed to be privy to what was said, because it can consciously influence you, like, oh, I don't remember that, so maybe I need to say that. But it can also just unconsciously influence your memory of things. If you have similar experiences thereafter, it can change your memory. So lots of things can affect your memory, which is also why, and I think we're going to do an episode about this issue of recovered memories, where a psychologist, through a therapeutic or whatever process you want to call it, recovers memories of sexual abuse that the person had no previous recollection for. Warning lights should be flashing right now, because you should never do that. But I've got two cases, one which has already been through court in South Africa, and one which is currently at court, where the sole case is based upon memories that didn't exist before. So we're not talking about, oh, I forgot about that, but now I remember it. Like if I ask you to think about your matric dance, you weren't thinking about it now possibly for years, but now it pops into your brain again. That's different. We're talking about memories that the person previously had no recollection for and suddenly has memories. And they sometimes can be incredibly vivid and come with strong emotions. And that sometimes, scarily in South Africa, has become the basis of criminal cases against people. And like I said, that's a whole episode I'd love to touch on, because the short answer is you never try and recover memories, ever, 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 ever. And there's guidelines throughout different parts of the world about that issue, that you should never do that. So anyway, so memory can change intentionally, consciously, and unconsciously. So that's another important thing to know, that it's never an exact replica.
Can we just unpack this a bit? So you should never kind of willingly do it, but you're talking about cases where people haven't had memories and they've kind of naturally recovered those memories and then testify with those memories in court, or what?
Or that kicks off a psychologist undergoing a process. Let's get more, because there must be more. And they start to extrapolate and spend weeks. And and this incident I never remember happened, and this incident so you sort of, essentially what you're doing, what the risk is, you are creating those memories. And no matter how emotional the responses the person is to those memories, how vivid and descriptive they are not, you cannot say that they are reliable memories. They might either be a complete fabrication that's created through that process. There might be an embellishment of an existing memory you're adding onto it, or they might be true. But the problem is, once you've engaged in this recovered memories process, we'll never know. You've tampered the witness, unfortunately, and damaged the case. If that type of evidence is presented and someone comments on recovered memories from an expert point of view, you've potentially, and that's what happened in the first case that's been finalized. The guy was found not guilty. I don't know if he ever did anything, but the memories are being contaminated by this process. But like I said, that's a whole episode on its own.
And if new memories are kind of confirmed by facts, by evidence?
Well, that's one of the most important things you just highlighted, is that we say we can never confirm a memory is true. We can only say it's true if it's corroborated by facts, a witness, DNA, a confession. That's the only way. The victim's response to the memory is no proof that it's true. Okay, great. So in summation, being a fact evidence is pretty much being in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time, either, if you like. All right, so that would be a fact. Are we still talking about fact witnesses, or are we moving on to expert yet? Tell me. In some way, you're involved in a criminal case. You're fact witness because in some way you're involved in this process of the crime, witnessing it or something to it. And typically, you're going to give oral. You would have given an affidavit to the police, a signed affidavit. You will be allowed to look at that in your consultations with the prosecutor who's going to call you as a witness. You'll obviously be able to look at your statement, but your evidence is going to be what you testify about. The only time your statement is going to be whipped up in a courtroom is if suddenly you're deviating markedly from what was in your statement. And then the other side might say, but my lord, I'd like to get permission from the court to show the statement to the witness and ask them a few questions, because what they're saying now differentiates to what's in their statement. And we know that statements are never 100% comprehensive and accurate. So if it's a little bit more detailed, that's fine. But if you said, I didn't see anybody around, and then in your evidence verbally you're saying, I saw 5 people, then it's like, whoa. That's a marked difference from your statement. So that's sometimes where the statement will be brought up. But essentially what you say verbally is your evidence. And that's different to an expert witness where usually you've been asked to prepare a report. That's one of the sort of, one of the key issues. But a psychologist, for example, can also be an expert, can be a factual witness. So if, let's say, for example, I'm treating a patient for depression. Fast forward 6 weeks down the line, he gets arrested for shoplifting a chocolate at the Pick and Pay. And they want to prosecute this case. And he tells his defense lawyer, but listen, I am under the care of a psychologist. The lawyer phones you. You get permission from your patient to speak to the lawyer. And he says, what are his symptoms? What do you think? Well, you say, well, one of his symptoms that I have in my notes is that he's very forgetful. Oh, do you think that's why he might have taken this chocolate because he says he doesn't remember taking the chocolate. It's unintentional. So, I can't say whether he took this chocolate because of his forgetfulness. That would be asking me to give an opinion about the facts of the case. I would then be in the role of an expert. But if you want me to come and testify that in my notes, he has symptoms of forgetfulness. He forgot to pick up his kids from school. He mentioned that in one of our sessions previously. He forgot a very important deadline for work. I can come and do that. But if you're going to ask me in court, is that why he walked out the shop with the chocolate? You're asking me to move from being a therapist, fact witness as a therapist, because I'm testifying about the history of my involvement with this person from my notes. And now you're asking me to be an expert witness. You should rather get another psychologist who's there to give an opinion about that aspect.
Okay. Have you ever come across a scenario where somebody has done both?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, it's a case that I think we covered. Mariska Duplessis. Remember the lady who shot her husband with the shotgun and then claimed it was housebreakers and then et cetera, and they tried to do bad women. So she had been seen as a psychologist on and off for 2-3 years before the shooting. In fact, she saw him, I think, the day of or the day before the shooting. And they called him into the courtroom to give an opinion as to whether or not the shooting incident was as a result of battered woman syndrome and blah, blah, blah. Now, and he got in a lot of trouble. He got in trouble in the courtroom. He got lambasted by the judge. The judge eventually said he must be reported to the council. He was reported to the council, HPCSA, the Health Professions Council, by the mother of the deceased person, the victim. And he was found guilty of basically transgressing. And the Health Professions Council is very strict about if you're in a therapeutic role with someone, you can never be an expert witness for that person. You can only be a factual witness, which really means you're going to talk out of your file notes. You can't formulate an opinion about the case at hand. So that's the big, and he got into big trouble with that. And it was actually quite embarrassing as a fellow psychologist to witness this guy who had no understanding of the courtroom. When he was asked, what's the role of an expert witness? Who are you there to help? He said, I'm here to help the accused person. It's like, no. And one of the most important distinctions
to help the court,
is, as an expert witness, is you're there to help the court decide about something that is beyond their expert knowledge, their expertise and knowledge. So State versus Duplessis is a very, very good example. And if you look at the Health Professions Council website, they do publish the convictions. When it comes to psychologists, the most common reason what they're convicted of is having that dual role of being therapist and then forensic assessor, or a forensic assessor and then later on therapeutically interacting with that person. You can't do that. It's big trouble. And a lot of psychologists don't know that.
Now, fact witnesses, I gather, are some of the best possible witnesses that a lawyer can have, and I imagine that therefore there's an obligation to that person and to that witness. I mean, we've just recently in the news, obviously, there's been the assassination of the witness around the Madlanga Commission. What is the obligation of the police, of the courts, to protect an important fact witness in cases that can be, obviously dangerous or sensitive?
Yeah, and it's not just a fact witness. Even expert witnesses can be at risk of being killed. So we've seen that with a few of these liquidators. I don't know what the proper term is, those lawyers who are doing liquidations. But yes, so if it's a criminal case and there is a concern for the safety, maybe a witness has received death threats, it is his job to put them a witness. The witness protection program is actually managed by the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority. And they can consider, and it depends on the case, it depends on how serious the matter is, it depends how serious the threat is. If you get a death threat in a stolen chocolate case, shoplifting case, they're probably not going to put you into witness protection. So it's probably going to be big cases, and obviously has to be credible threats. And then they decide and they put you into a witness protection program. The police typically, I think, wouldn't even know where you are. But it's not fun. You've taken out of your life. You can't have contact with anybody. You might be stuck in Pof Adder. You can't get a job. You can't have contact with any family or friends. And it's usually only until the trial is over. It's only very exceptional cases where afterwards, and I think that it's had to do with the lady who testified in the JP Zuma rape case, where she was relocated afterwards overseas. So it's typically only until your trial's done, and then, witness protection ends. So most people actually break witness protection because they can't actually abide by the rules.
Yeah. I've actually got a friend who's going through that, one of their siblings. So, and it is extremely, I mean, it's extremely detrimental to your life, isn't it? Okay.
Psychologically, it's huge.
Yeah. I just want to say a quick thank you to Bianca for your super sticker. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I think it's people doing construction. I think in the flat above or the flat behind me. So forgive me for that one.
Is that going to happen? Are we going to be witness to some refurbishment going on there? All right. So great. So we talked about fact witnesses. Where to next, Gerard? Let's continue.
Okay. So the only other kinds of witnesses would be then your expert witnesses. Now, the easiest way to look at this is that an expert witness is someone who's been asked after the incident has occurred, typically, to come and give their opinion about a set of facts. You can get expert witnesses, like you could say, I guess the forensic pathologist, it's at the time of the murder, the body's been found, they're going to come and testify. But essentially, in a way, the crime has been committed, and someone is having to interpret information. It's going to go away, hopefully, very soon. So, like I said, the ones we commonly associate that with would be your forensic pathologists, your DNA analysts, your bloodstain pattern analysts, your ballistics people, a psychologist who's going to come and testify at sentencing of the offender to comment on the risk the person poses. But it doesn't always have to be someone who has like an academic qualification. What makes you an expert is your knowledge. Oh, that's a bad one. Knowledge, experience, and training. So again, your ballistics guys at the police don't necessarily have a degree. They've just been trained in-house through SAPS in ballistics, gone through the ballistics training, which might be very intense. Yes, of course, your psychologist, you're going to have an academic training. But depending what the matter might be, I mean, I always like to give an example. Let's say a guy was keeping bees in his backyard in Parkhurst, which has typically very small properties. And one day those bees swarm over next door and they sting a kid swimming at the swimming pool and they die as a result of that. There might be a criminal prosecution against that guy keeping bees. So who's going to be the person best to come and testify about, but was this inappropriate? Would be another beekeeper who might have learned beekeeping from his father. I don't know. I don't know if there's any professional training in beekeeping. And say, but look, according to our things, you don't have a beehive within, 100 meters of a residential area because they can swarm, et cetera, et cetera. So expertise can come from people who don't, as I said, have fancy qualifications. They just have a lot of experience in a particular concept that the court needs to understand. So in the Neisner murder series trial of Heini van Rooyen, they found certain type of pollen attached to his pants. And it was a sticky pollen that then sort of dries on the clothing, and then eventually when it dries, would typically drop off the animal that it got onto and propagate somewhere else at a distance from that plant. So they had to call a botanist, and so they found a lady at I think Stellenbosch University who was an expert in that particular plant to come and testify. Now, she in her life never thought she's going to be testifying forensically. But because the court required someone who had knowledge about this particular type of plant and this particular type of pollen, that was the best person to come and explain how this pollen works. So maybe the only time in her whole life she's going to come and take on the role of a forensic person to testify about her expertise. So an expert witness isn't necessarily someone whose job it is to be testifying in courts. So it could be, for example, maybe the case is about autism, where an autistic person might have injured someone. And now whoever, the prosecution or defense, wants to bring an expert on autism and this person's particular level of autism, and how does this impact how they behave, and can they control that type of behavior? And that, again, might be your local expert at a university who's an autism expert. Never thought he's going to set foot in the courtroom, but that knowledge is required to help the court come to a conclusion. It can be an auditor, it can be a forensic accountant or an accountant, etc. So the spectrum of who is an expert is quite broad, and it's not, like I said, only about an academic qualification here. If it had to do with producing television shows, maybe that's the nature of the case. You might be an expert called for that purpose on what is standard procedure and how things are done.
How to get rid of the noise in the background, which I will do, by the way. I've become an expert at that. So when whoever's listening to the podcast next will not hear all the drilling in the background as badly. Okay. That said, are there people who make a big chunk of their living from being an expert witness?
Absolutely. I mean, forensic pathologist is a quick example, and a lot of that. And you can get private forensic pathologists like Estelle van Staden, who we've had on our show before, who's does that program Autopsy on that Afrikaans TV channel. He's got books of her own. And so a lot of her work is private forensic work. So basically her whole work is in something to do with the legal system, because she's either doing autopsies for the state, for the government at the Braamfontein mortuary, or she's being briefed by private counsel to give an opinion about cases. So absolutely, there are people that do that. Private forensic experts, ballistic experts. They're not a lot, but there are some that survive by doing that kind of work. I mean, my work, a lot of it back home in South Africa, you could say even my workplace violence stuff for corporate consulting has got to do with forensic stuff. But definitely my expert witness work. I mean, I didn't have a therapeutic practice since 2001. So whenever I was testifying, whenever I was doing my assessments for psychological assessments, it was going to be as in a forensic capacity. And also the difference is how you get approached. As I said, your factual witness, you happen to see something and you hang around and the police come and take a statement from you, or they contact you and say, did you see this accident? Okay, we want a statement from you. An expert witness is going to be approached by a lawyer and say, I have a case. The case has this issue. I've been told that you are the best person who has knowledge about this issue. So the difference there is that you're supposed to be approached by a lawyer. Now, did I often get accused people phoning me or sending me an email saying, I've been arrested or I have a trial, I need to get an expert psychologist to testify at my sentencing? Well, my typical response would say, I do that work, but I cannot be approached by you. You are the person I have to assess. Your lawyer needs to be contacting me because my contract is not with you. My contract is with your lawyer that's going to appoint me because they are in charge of the case. So I negotiate my fees with the lawyer. My bill is addressed to the lawyer. The lawyer pays me. Yes, he's going to, first, before he contracts me, he's going to say, listen, I got the quotation from the psychologist, it's going to cost that much. Yes, of course, the accused person is going to be funding that in a private case, private referral. But, I don't, if a lawyer has to say to me, Gerard, I haven't paid you yet because my client hasn't paid me. It's like, dude, that's not my problem. Yeah. I didn't contract with your client. I contracted with you. Because, of course, can you imagine it? Imagine if I'm taking money directly from the person who is the person I have to assess. Is it not looking like I'm being paid to give a certain opinion? Whereas I've had it where my opinion was not in the favor of the accused person. Imagine trying to get my money out of him for my assessment if I give him a report directly that he doesn't like. So that's kind of the practical reasons why. Because the lawyer also has to decide what is the specific legal question I want you to look at. And that might be, in the case of a psychologist, very focused. He might say to me, I just want you to come and testify, assess whether or not this person my client is a pedophile, and to come and testify about that. And I might find out in my assessment, well, yes, he's not, or no, he isn't, or yes, he is. But I also might find out, well, the guy's a psychopath. Now, I can't put that in my report because that wasn't what I was asked to assess. I might say to the lawyer, listen, here's my report on whether or not your client is a pedophile. By the way, I do think your client's a psychopath, and what do you want me to do with that? But I cannot exceed my mandate of what I was briefed to do. I have a very strict instruction, and I do that instruction, and I don't deviate from that instruction.
If you discover something within the mandate that is detrimental to the case of the person that's hired you, are they kind of obliged to take note of it? Can they ignore that bit?
Nope. Not at all. So, in fact, like let's go back. We spoke about the Gerry Ackerman case. We did that recently, didn't we?
Yeah.
And in that case, I was asked by legal aid to do an assessment, and my assessment was not at all flattering about Mr. Ackerman. I mean, he had raped multiple people. They were underage kids, so you can imagine what the terminology I was using. And I presented it to his lawyer, and I briefed the lawyer to say, look, I've looked at the judgment. I don't know if my outcome of my findings is going to be helpful just based on what he's convicted of, in the actions that he's convicted of. And he just said, I want you to go ahead and give me an honest opinion. So I did that. I gave him my report. He said, thank you. He went to speak to Ackerman. Ackerman said, I refuse to allow you to use this report in court. And because the attorney, the lawyer, works on the instruction of his client, who is the accused person, he has to abide by that. And they didn't call me. And they can't be forced to produce my report. Like they will know that if they're not calling me, it's because my report didn't help them. But the prosecution cannot say to the judge, we insist on that report being released. There's case law that says you can't do that. Now, the prosecution, on the other hand, can't hide their expert reports. So let's say I'd done that same an assessment for a prosecutor, and I had said, this person is low risk for reoffending. The crime was very much contextually bound to the circumstances of the event and how it unfolded. Therefore, I don't think there's a danger of this person committing this act again. Well, if he's trying to get a heavy sentence for the accused person, my report clearly is not going to be very helpful. The prosecutor has to make that report available to the other side, and they can call me as their expert if he or she, the prosecutor, is not going to call me. But the rules are not the same for the defense. So that's why I often say that it's the whole justice system is really geared towards the accused person, giving them all the advantages all the way. Even in how you can appeal something, there's more reasons that the accused can use to appeal a crime, a conviction, than there are for the prosecution to use. So it's definitely that the system is geared towards the accused person, who obviously faces the huge consequences of what could happen if it's a faulty conviction.
Now, I have come to learn over the last couple of months that, look, you always know that lawyers a profession where, the money's good, you get paid the big bucks. And I've come to realize in the last couple of months that I think the reason that lawyers get paid a lot is because they are like secretaries on acid, because the amount of administrative work you have to do, paperwork, just admin for days. I think you have to be paid a lot of money not to want to jump off a building because you're just sick and tired of doing all the paperwork. That said, do they, lawyers' fees are good. Are they putting in a big chunk of cash for the expert witnesses? Is this a lucrative endeavor for the expert witness?
In terms of fees, there are no guidelines for what an expert witness can charge. There might be guidelines, but there's no limit. So if I wanted to charge someone 100,000 Rand to do a report that I might charge legal aid, I don't know, say 20,000 Rand, I can do that. And perhaps the bigger your reputation is, the more you can charge. If people are willing to pay what you want to charge, then there's nothing stopping you. But I must say that I do think there is a cap on what a service is valued at. If I'm going to do a risk assessment report for sentencing of an offender, I know it's going to involve 2 or 3 interviews. I know it's going to involve reading through some documentation and maybe 1 or 2 collaterals. I know basically the time and length. So I have a standard fee that I have in my mind that what this service is worth. Now, I might charge a little bit less if I know that ultimately the people funding the accused or their family doesn't have a lot of money. I might charge less for that. Or if it's legal aid, because it's a government organization, I might charge a little bit less than I would if it was a private fee. But I don't say, oh my goodness, this is Bill Gates, I'm going to charge $1 million for what I would have charged everybody else at the max 50,000. I think that's unethical, because now you're just trying to fleece someone because they have money. So, I'll give you an example, although I only found out how rich this guy was afterwards.
Look, if it's Bill Gates, you're not fleecing the guy. $1 million is not fleecing the guy, okay?
It was a local South African crypto guy who done, I didn't know at the time, phenomenally well. Fast forward, his crypto companies is in America, and there is an arrest case from an old, I would almost go so far as an arbitrary case in South Africa from many years ago that for some reason somebody insisted on prosecuting. I think it was a fraud case where he was like an accountant somewhere at a company, at a cookie factory. And he was going to be extradited, and I need to do an assessment of this guy because he'd been in solitary confinement for a ridiculously long period of time. And I did my assessment. Afterwards, I found out this guy is a multi-billionaire.
Oh.
I didn't Google him beforehand. Would I have charged more? No, because it would have been unethical. Would I have charged what I think is the maximum amount? I think I did actually charge probably what I would have charged when there was no like reason to deviate downwards. So I didn't screw myself, but it would have been unethical to say, well, this guy's a multi-billionaire. I mean, this guy made billions and billions in Bitcoin.
Look, we got to debate this part. I mean, I don't think we must just straight out the gate call it unethical. You know, it's called.
Well, again, and it comes down to you.
The scale, you know.
But the risk is, I do think that if you're charging, and I've seen local psychologists will charge 150,000 Rand, which is something that I don't think should be more than 40,000.
Okay.
The risk is if you're charging such an exorbitant amount, what is that person expecting to get from you? Are you going to be able to produce a report that actually is honest but not helpful for them?
Yeah.
So I do think, the higher prices like that come with, you're going to be talking bullshit to give them what they want. You are then becoming a hired gun. I'm sorry. I think if you're charging those amounts.
No, you are.
But like I said, I don't know about other professions, but in my profession, psychology, you can charge whatever you want. It's again your experience. So it's not like people say, well, it should be like the same price as a therapy hour is what you should be charging per hour. Absolutely not. You're an expert witness, which means you have expertise above and beyond your peer group. You should be charging more for that, and I think it's quite justifiably so. But there should be limits of that. Of course, if you work for the government, you're testifying as an expert, but you're just getting your normal daily salary, so you're not getting anything extra for being an expert witness.
And, if it's a Scientology case related, then you can charge high because we know they love psychologists. Anyway. Okay. So who typically hires you then, Gerard, as a psychologist?
Yeah.
Who's normally comes a knocking?
Yeah. Like I said, it must be a lawyer that contracts you. I will get people who, out of ignorance, phone me and say, hey, I've got this case. I need an expert. Often you get people who, before they've even spoken to a lawyer, start to run around trying to get experts. And I always say to them, stop. Your first port of call, if you're going to go to trial, either a civil case because you want to sue someone because you were falsely arrested, or a criminal case against you and you want to get a private lawyer, is get your lawyer. It's your lawyer who's going to decide what is relevant to your case. Because I've had people say, I want to get a report from a psychologist saying this, and this. And I said to them, but that's not at all legally relevant. So yes, you can go find a psychologist who will give you a report like that. But when eventually you get your lawyer, they're going to say, but that's not relevant. You've spent 20,000, 30,000 Rand on a report that serves absolutely no purpose for what we need in terms of what the law is expecting. So in any case, if you're in trouble with the law, civilly or criminally, your first stop is get a good lawyer. You can have a shit lawyer, but great experts, you will lose your case.
Yeah.
You should be spending good money, and preferably not your buddy who's a real estate lawyer and you're going to use him now for your criminal case. This is one place in the world where you do not want to try and save a buck, is getting a good lawyer, because they can even prevent the case from going to court if they're good enough in this legal grounds. Get a good lawyer. The lawyer will decide what he or she needs for the purposes of this case. What are the legal avenues that can be exploited here or that we need to challenge? And they will then get the appropriate expert. So I've also had it where the woman will say, but my lawyer told me to go find a psychologist. And I'll say to her, get another lawyer, because your lawyer should be doing that. They clearly don't know what they're doing. If he's sending you to go find an expert, sorry, my friend, I would fire that lawyer on the spot if they told me to do that. The lawyer needs to go find the appropriate experts, contract with them, tell you what the fee would be, because yes, you are going to have to deposit that money into the lawyer's trust account, so that he knows. Otherwise, because I've had it where, as I said earlier, where the lawyer was saying, yeah, but I haven't been able to pay you because we're struggling to get the money out of the company, out of the accused's mom who was footing the bill. And I was tolerant for about 3-4 months, but eventually I said, "Oh, well, I'm reporting you to the council, your own, what is it, the Legal Practitioners Council," because it actually says that you can't hire an expert if you don't have the money to pay them. And even if they never got their money from the accused's mom, they would have to pay me because my contract was with them. Okay. The lawyer, them. When I say them, I mean the lawyer.
Okay. All right. So we've covered what's a fact witness, what is an expert witness, how you end up being an expert witness. What do we need to remember? What's important to remember throughout the process? And, what is expected of you when you eventually get to walking into court?
Yeah. So like I said, the most important thing, I'm approached by a lawyer. He has told me what the legal issue is that they need me to address from my profession, whether it's psychologist, forensic pathologist, ballistics person. I gather the necessary information to achieve that goal. I do whatever assessment I have to do. I write my report objectively, and I send it off back to the lawyer. And again, the outcome, and any expert witness is supposed to be honest, because you're not there to try and help the party that's approached you. You're there to actually be assistance to the court. Now, do you get hired guns? Absolutely, I've seen it. Do you get ignorant psychologists or experts who do things they shouldn't do out of ignorance? Absolutely, I've seen it. Like in the Mariska Duplessis case we spoke about a moment ago. But your job is to answer to the legal question to the best of your ability and give it honestly. So yes, you'll then give your report back to the lawyer that contracted you. I've had it where they'll say, look, what you're saying here isn't very clear. Can you elaborate? Can you expand upon this? Or you didn't address this part of what we wanted you. That's fine. But if they say to you, ooh, you said very harsh things, can you tone it down? Well, I would probably say, well, no, how I've expressed it, which shouldn't be emotional, it should be factual. Unfortunately, it is my opinion that your client is a huge danger to society. And I can't express that in softened ways because now I'm being dishonest. I'm not being honest in what my formulation was. So your ethics as an expert witness is high priority, but it's very easy to deviate from those ethics because, but of course you ultimately have to stand up in court and justify that opinion. And if the opposing side has their own expert, like we often used to sit in court and help, even if we weren't going to testify on the case as an expert, we would often sit next to the prosecutor and help advise them on how to question this person. You can end up really embarrassing yourself if it's highlighted. And I've had that just before I left South Africa, where a very experienced psychologist, who also a sexual abuse case that where she was testifying, the victim's family had got her. And so she was essentially the prosecution's witness, but she'd been arranged by the family of the little girl that had been allegedly molested. So this person had done an assessment of the little girl who'd been molested, but was making a lot of statements about the accused, that he did this, he did that, which you can't do as a psychologist. But also what we found from her assessment, in a nutshell, it was basically this young girl has been so traumatized, it must have been because she was sexually abused. But when we look through her material, because remember, the other side can ask for your whole file. We've got your report, we want all your data, your whole file, every single note in your file. You have to be able to give to the other side that they can scrutinize it. And we basically found that 4 out of the 5 tests that this psychologist had used were incorrect. They'd either been scored incorrect, the answers, the outcomes she reflected in the report didn't reflect what the outcomes in the test results were. Or some of them had just been done wrongly, added up wrongly, and basically, and essentially, her credibility as a witness in that case diminished extremely because she'd just shown that she'd done a terrible job. So the consequences are that if you do a really bad job, and it's shown that you did such a bad job, or that you'd intentionally done a bad job, they can find you to be an unreliable witness, which is basically saying you lied to the court as an expert. Good luck ever testifying in court again. Because if you are testifying, say 6 months down the line in another court, and let's say the prosecutor or the defense counsel hears about this previous incident where a court had found you unreliable because you were not honest, they can and will raise that. As you stand up in the witness stand, they will object to you being there, saying, but you've been found to be a liar to the court. We can never trust your opinion. Yeah. So you do risk a lot in terms of your reputation for that little bit of money. Now, does it happen often? I think it doesn't happen as often as it should. I think courts are hesitant to damn someone's career with them not being from that field. It'll have to be very, very clear and obvious. They might just say, look, we reject your evidence. We don't think, you were objective. Yeah. That's one thing. But I mean, it's been said that
But really, I mean, it just means that you're no longer, you can still go back to your job and practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can do your therapy stuff,
You
but
can go back and get better,
your days isn't.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like we spoke the other day about the Nchungwana case, and we spoke about I think it was Prof. Gangat, who was a psychiatrist, and this is public knowledge, so I'm not slandering someone. You can go read the judgment, and it was in the newspapers. Who was really slammed, saying that he tailored his evidence to suit the case, which is very basically meaning that you were a hired gun.
Yeah.
And that will stick with you. And if the other side is aware, now there's not a blacklist where you get blacklisted by the courts. So unfortunately, if you testify badly in Pofadder, it's probably nobody's ever going to know about that case.
Yeah.
And not all high court judgments are typed and put on SAFLI, which is that sort of electronic repository for cases. So, it does unfortunately boil down to who knows about the case and who's got the info. And ideally, if you got the judgment where the judge said that you can, highlight to the court.
Yeah. I just want to say a quick thank you to Bianca for your contribution. We appreciate you, Bianca. Anne says witnesses are not safe in South Africa. Witness D got killed.
Yeah.
Yes, you did. We got some questions for later. Shelley, thank you once again. Shelley, one of our regulars. So nice to have you with us, Shelley, as always. And I've spotted your question. And then Ashley says, I know in studying health and safety, an expert is someone who has experience, training, qualifications, and knowledge on the particular subject. Only then can one be declared competent.
Absolutely.
Now,
and also, sorry, on Ashley's comment, because that's very important what she said. It's not an academic qualification necessarily. It's not like you are on a permanent register of experts. So every time you set foot in the courtroom, they're going to test you to see if you're an expert at what you're talking about today. So, I mean, I might be an expert on 101 psychological things, but if I step into the courtroom and I'm suddenly testifying about autism, I know nothing about autism. So you're not deemed an expert forever and ever and ever. So every time you get into the witness stand, they're going to ask you, what is your experience with serial murder? How many cases have you worked on? And if I'm testifying about pedophilia tomorrow, they're going to say, what's your experience with pedophilia? Does your CV reflect that you've had training, you've worked in environments relevant to it, you've been to conferences, you've spoken at conferences, you've published academically, blah, 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 about pedophilia. And then we saw in the Oscar Pistorius case, Roger Dixon, there was a very nice ENCA third degree episode about the experts who testified in the Oscar Pistorius case. And I always use that when I give training. And Roger Dixon, who was a retired colonel from the forensics laboratory, and he, by training, was a geologist. In other words, rocks and soil. But he was testifying in the Oscar Pistorius case about light and sound in the bedroom when this happened. And he was lambasted and taken apart by Gerry Labuschagne because, like, you're a geologist, you're testifying about light and sound. And they said, what's your instruments? I use my eyes and my ears. And, it was disastrous. And I don't know why Roger did it, because Roger was experienced, and he knew the world was watching, and you had obviously Barry Roux on the other side. Gerry Nel on because he was called by Oscar's team. Gerry Nel is going to have a go at you about all of this, and it was so you have to be qualified on the day that you're in the court for what you're about to testify about.
I was going to say, I mean, if you're on a case like the Oscar case, then you have to be super aware of the potential damage that a case like that can have reputationally if things go bad and you're proven to be.
I mean, I was scared I was going to have to testify in the Oscar case. I was hoping I wasn't going to have to, and luckily I didn't because it wasn't necessary. But
no, it wasn't
especially
necessary
when the world is watching it.
Because you made sure you sat right behind Gerry, so you always got your camera time in there, George. You knew you were getting your headshots in and your future book promo getting
without the risk. Yeah.
How do you delineate? I have a question. Okay, let me just ask my question, then you can say what you're going to say and answer my question at the same time. Is there a difference between giving expert testimony and opinion?
Yeah. So it is, but they often talk about it almost interchangeably. That opinion evidence is typically expert evidence, because, as I said, they don't want the opinion of a layperson who witnessed something. Do you think he should have shot that guy at that time? Do you think the car was speeding, going too fast? Because, like, as I said, you can have 20 people who watch the same thing, and they're all going to have a different opinion. So the court wants the facts, the details. The court can then formulate what they say must have happened. Okay. Like I said, but otherwise everybody's got their own opinion, and it doesn't mean much.
And then I
So
interrupt.
there often is the same. Opinion evidence, expert evidence is kind of the same thing. Now, I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure we touch on a few funny or interesting moments from having testified all those years. But I don't know
Yeah.
if there's something else you want to jump onto
No,
first.
that's absolutely, because I was also going to ask you and throw in the mix here. Any lawyers that have really given you a run for your money kind of thing as well,
Yeah.
where you've walked in there thinking this is going to be a breeze, and
Oh.
you've been taken to task by a hotshot from Law and Order.
So I was as I said, I was doing this training about a week ago in Calgary and it involved also sort of expert witness stuff. And I actually said, I found that in the first few years of me testifying, I had more like hectic experiences with lawyers. Like, you're useless. I used to be the lawyer for the Health Professions Council, and if I had seen this line coming across my table as a disciplinary complaint, I would have said it's the worst report I've ever seen, and you should be disciplined, etc. So I think the reason why I had a lot of that early in my career is because I was early in my career, and people were trying those little cheap tactics to see if it would rattle me. But I think as I got more experience, and maybe, I don't know, reputation, but definitely more experience, I think they knew we're not going to try stupid tactics with this person to fluster them. The silly, childish tactics that some lawyers use. But the very first day I testified ever, I was actually still at Westcorpus Hospital working there as a psychologist, and had been a guy who had, along with his girlfriend and the girlfriend's mother, conspired to kill the girlfriend's dad or the wife's husband, okay, if that makes sense to everybody. And he was the trigger man. And I spent, I think, 3 days in the witness stand basically my evidence and being cross-examined, which is a long time. And it was difficult because the advocate cross-examining me was asking really dumb questions. It's actually more difficult when you're asked stupid questions. So that was just like a long slog where I had to repeat myself and, go over things. So that was unpleasant for that, but it was a good baptism by fire, because as I said, most people, you're in and out in the same day with your evidence and your cross-examination. In most cases, there are exceptions, of course. And then I said, I've had a few where they've had a go at me, and typically if you've done a good and honest job, you've been thorough, you don't react to those, those type of cheap shots, and you say, based on the method you used, the information you had, and your expertise, this is my opinion. You'll usually get through it quite fine if you've been honest and done a good job. You have to have done a good job. That's the important thing. Like I said the worst. I was probably in the Neisner case, the Heine van Rooyen, where also I think it was Advocate Terry Price, who's well known as a bulldog of a private counsel, and would get very heated, not only with the witnesses but also with the judges, sometimes to his detriment. And he also kind of had this attitude of, this is the worst type of thing, this is useless, it's junk, it's blah, blah, blah. And again, you just stay calm and you respond. Sorry, there's a drilling again. And the other one, as I said, was the guy who said he used to be the lawyer for the Health Professions Council doing disciplinary complaints, and this was the worst case. And that was a case where an orthopedic surgeon had been molesting his patients over a number of years. And that was that particular case. But that was also like many, many years ago. Do your work, do it honestly, know what you're doing, be calm, respond, get some supervision is what I would advise anybody. You might be an expert in your job, but if you've never testified on a forensic assessment, it's very, very different. And it's worthwhile getting paid supervision, or if you know people who've done that work, it is in your interest to get that kind of stuff. Other weird stuff I've had it where I've been accused in the Fanuel Kumalo serial rapist. He was that sort of celebrity chef in Johannesburg, but he was raping kids. I've had it where I was warned beforehand by the prosecutor that they're going to challenge my identity, that I'm not who I am. So I had to bring my ID book and my degrees, framed degrees, to the courtroom because they said, we don't believe that you are Gerard Labuschagne. And the lawyer was very embarrassed because he knew this was a load of bullshit. But his client insisted that that question be put to me. So he kind of like was standing there, the defense lawyer saying, my lord, I have to ask this question on the instruction of my client. And he kind of like looked up and rolled his eyes. You are not, my client says, you are not Gerard Labuschagne. And I had to whip out my ID and stuff. And very quickly we moved on, because that was like a non-starter.
Next time, I've got some advice. Next time, you just share your YouTube channel. I've got a YouTube channel. Check out Profiler Africa. You'll find out everything you need to know there. Hit like and subscribe if you're on there. You can get us a few extra subscribers next time.
I've had it where afterwards the defense lawyer runs up to me. I also a serial rape case, and he was defending the guy, and we took adjournment, or I finished testifying. He runs up and says, "Can I quickly speak to you?" And I'm like, okay. And because my evidence was done, it was okay for him to actually have a conversation with me. And we go into like a little room, and he asks me for like relationship advice because he was having a difficult time with his partner, is in his romantic relationship. I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
anything nutty? What about
where,
like just nutty experiences with maybe? Sorry.
Yeah, it's almost done.
Excuse me. Any kind of like crazy experiences with with the accused, with witnesses, with ranting and raving in court, or people challenging
I've had family
you?
family who give you like the evil eye, or sort of make a snide comment as you walk past. You've got to understand they're going through their stuff, and they see you as someone who's there to help the other side, and that's sad, and I can understand it. I mean, as I said, expert witness is there to help the court, and my opinion should be exactly the same whether I was contracted by the prosecution or the defense. If my opinion is going to vary depending on who's called me, then I am a hired gun. I'm not being honest. So I think that's sad, but unfortunately you do get psychologists who are there as hired guns or just do a shitty job. And yeah, understandably, it does look like they're trying to get the person off, or help you on the wrong side. You're on the side that's trying to get this guy off, and experts are not supposed to be doing that. But like I said, that's unfortunately not always the case. And that's why cross-examination is there, to call people to order if they've done something that they shouldn't, or done a bad job, or whatever the case may be. So basically side eye from people. That's par for the course. What else?
Do you ever get kind of quizzed on like hypotheticals and things like that?
They can try that, but there's a limit to that, because they'll say, we have to deal with the facts of the case. So I once had a guy say, what about, how would you profile? This is the scenario. And like, I know that's not a lot of information. Okay, but then this also, and I just said to the court, my lord, this is not how we do profiling. We don't sit here with bits of piece of information, drips and drabs, and given to us. We sit down with the body of information, we look at it, we assess it, we say what we can say about that particular case. But you can't get too hypothetical. And I think there's actually case law that says you're not supposed to base it on hypothetical things. You're supposed to stick to the facts of the case. You can illustrate with examples. You can refer to other cases that you've worked on of a similar nature. But hypothetical situations, they'll typically say, that's not helpful to the court.
Yeah. If you are an expert witness, I mean, I imagine that you have thought, very thoroughly about the implications of that on your personal life and how you need to kind of handle yourself. I mean, here you are doing a podcast, and I'm sure that the fact that you're an expert witness is a there's a natural edit that you have in your head where you don't want to, okay, I don't want to talk about that, I don't want to talk about this. How do you manage that potential exposure and the potential risk, you personally, and what advice can you give to people in that regard?
Look, as any expert witness, specifically if you belong to a professional body like the Health Professions Council, there's a risk that somebody's going to report you just because they're pissed off with you. I mean, you see that a lot with experts in divorce cases or custody or access or whatever, family law cases. That's why I don't do that stuff, is you will be reported repeatedly in multiple cases to the HPCSA because one party isn't happy with your results and they see it as a way of either getting revenge upon you by reporting you or trying to neutralize your report by reporting you to the HPCSA. So that's par for the course, more so in family law. I've only had, I think, twice ever when I was doing criminal forensic work. The very first case that I mentioned where I testified for 2 to 3 days, in my report, I criticized the defense psychologist who had done a bad job, who had used unlicensed software, scored things incorrectly. So part of my evidence was to comment on his report, and he reported me to the Health Professions Council, and the case was eventually thrown out. It didn't proceed to a full hearing. And of course, people might have seen now in the news recently where Donovan Woodley reported me to the Health Professions Council because of the parole report that I wrote in 2022 and 2023.
I was going to say that, I mean, we discussed covering that case a number of times earlier in the year, and you very much asked us to stay away from it because of that, so we didn't schedule that story at the time.
Yeah, and just for people's interests, the parole board now did recommend, I think, parole, and have referred it to now the minister's team that looks at it and also gives their opinion. So that's where it's sitting. So it's not a hard and fast. And then the minister gives his final yay or nay on it. That's just an update on that particular
Is
situation.
that something that public can kind of provide feedback to the minister's office or to whoever is that
I don't think. I think it's. I don't think so. I'm not sure, to be very honest with you, whether the public can submit representations to the minister. I mean, I guess they can send letters. There's nothing to stop you to sending off letters of complaint and petitions. But I don't know if there's a formal mechanism. But I'm speaking under correction, so please don't. Rather go look at it and Google search that.
And I also think we must follow up on that case in the new year and do a proper kind of update on where it stands and what the status is, etc., etc.
And what's happening with my own case in that matter. We'll see what's going to happen with that.
How long does that kind of thing take to resolve? I mean, because it's been ongoing for a long time
years.
this year.
It can take absolutely bloody years to get to a conclusion. These things get postponed at a drop of a hat. There's not even a date yet for a hearing, etc. So they can take a very long time. But another example of where this can be harmful for you is a lot of psychologists. I just talk about psychologists. They have a private practice and they'll do expert witness on the side. So they have a normal therapeutic practice doing, non-forensic work. So I had a colleague who did the Dross rapist. Remember that case, the guy in the Dross who raped the little girl? Legal aid represented. Legal aid sent out a call for people to submit a quotation for a sentencing report. I don't know how many people did. But anyway, my colleague who used to work with us in the unit got the contract to do the assessment of that guy. She asked me to sort of supervise the report or give my thoughts, and it was a very, very well done, balanced report. And I think what she said about the guy and his risk was very level-headed and accurate. But in the report, when she was summarizing the interview with the accused person, she said, blah, 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 this is background. He said that if he gets a long jail sentence, he might commit suicide, blah, 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 blah. So this was just history of what the guy said to her. So what does the newspapers report? Newspaper reports, psychologist says he shouldn't get a long sentence because he will kill himself. Now you can imagine what the Google comments were about her. They were all like, you effing this, you are evil, blah, 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 blah. And now, of course, her who has a private practice, when somebody looks for a psychologist, nowadays you Google search people, don't you? So you Google search the name of that psychologist, and now all these Google reviews and Google whatever comments everywhere attached to articles, etc., pop up. And for her, she's like, well, shit, I'm not going to do this work anymore because, this is potentially going to harm my private practice. And I think that's why you saw when Gerry Ackerman's case came up and Legal Aid did a call for quotations, nobody submitted a quotation, not a single psychologist. And then the legal representative said to me, look, Gerard, would you not be prepared to submit a quotation? Nobody submitted a quotation. And I did. Also because I'm not worried about, when you're doing only forensic work, I don't have to worry about that somebody's going to be unhappy and post a bad comment somewhere, somehow. That can influence my therapeutic practice. Because I was only doing forensic work, and I'm only worried about what lawyers think, whether they feel I'm a good, honest witness who can do a good job. So for me, I didn't have the same kind of risks that other people have. Have I ever received death threats for my evidence? Not for my evidence. I've got death threats from people who I help get convicted and arrested, but never from my expert witness work. I'm sure there's people that are unhappy with me. And when I still used to actually post things on Twitter, which I haven't done for probably a year now. There was one guy who I'm sure was a family member or an accused person who was posting how useless I am in general about things. But I've never had death threats. But that doesn't mean that you're not in some kind of a danger, because the people that really want to harm you tend not to warn you beforehand. But
as much as you've gotten
sure
death
other
threats,
witnesses have.
Death threats, but also on the odd occasion you've gotten nice works of art and gifts from people you've put in jail as well. So there's always the other side of the coin. Are there cases that you've turned down for just on principle that you do not want to speak on behalf of that person, or you don't want to give evidence that might assist that person, or what have you?
So there were two cases. The one was at Penny Sparrow. It was Penny Sparrow, or it was another lady who was also, no, it wasn't. I think it was another lady who also had gone on a racist rant and was being prosecuted for that. again, it wasn't that I didn't feel I could do an honest job.
Just as context, Penny Sparrow is a lady who one Christmas posted some very racist comments about folks at the beach and was massively kind of she had to deal with the consequences of that. But
no, wasn't she the lady? Which was the lady who was caught? She was filmed swearing at traffic officers and cops, and how the cops.
I don't think that was no, that wasn't
anyway.
Penny Sparrow. Yeah,
oh,
but
okay.
anyway,
but
it was that kind of case.
But this case
Something
was
along
similar.
those
It was a
lines.
person who'd gone on a racist diatribe. And I was asked by the lawyers, and I think it was a smaller case. I don't even think it was in the media really, but it was a case of that nature. And I just kind of felt, I just said, yeah, you know what, no. Even though I could do an honest job and give an honest opinion, and I'd be quite comfortable with that, as you should as an expert, I thought I just no. So that I didn't. Let me think. There was another one more recently about, it was an old apartheid case where a guy had, a hit squad had killed a guy in the 70s or 80s. And fast forward many years, one of those people had admitted to somebody that they actually, and had gone through an inquest in those days, and the inquest had cleared them of any wrongdoing. They said the guy pulled a gun. Fast forward to now recent years, and one of these people who was involved said actually no, something to the effect of this was actually just a murder case. Long story short, they opened up a prosecution against all 5 of those people, of which the guy who mentioned to a journalist that actually it was a murder was now going to plead guilty, basically accepting responsibility for what he'd done. And I felt I don't want to do that case. And again, they struggled to find someone. They eventually did. I think Kirsten Clark actually testified in that particular case, who's one of our guests. And I turned that down partly because of I was also leaving the country, so I wasn't sure if it was going to be able to be present. And also, and partly, honestly, because of the Moodley case against me at the HPCSA. I didn't want someone to go, oh, that's the guy who was helping the apartheid killer. And I don't know if that could influence somebody who's going to be maybe on my hearing.
Yeah.
So actually that and the fact that I was not sure if I was going to be around for when it went to trial was the reason, because someone might, again, misconstrue the role of an expert to think you're helping bad people get out of, doing bad things. And that was the reason why. So that was a strategic reason why I turned that down. If it hadn't been for that, I probably would have done it. Because if I can do an honest, good job about someone's level of risk, it's not justifying what they're doing. Why shouldn't it be done? Because we're worse off when people don't give honest opinions that can help the court. Vicky Monberg, that's the one.
It's Moondancer's first show, and Moondancer is already making a fantastic contribution. Thank you, Moondancer.
Thank you.
And Shelley as well. There we go. Vicky Monberg, is that the one? Okay, so look, I mean, I didn't even think we would. This is a fascinating topic, and I'm just. There's plenty more to talk about on this subject. I'm interested in any more anecdotes off the top of your head before we start to wrap up the conversation, and then we'll take a couple of additional and just kind of what are your golden rules for being an expert witness, or golden things to take into account from somebody who's been there, done that, and got the T-shirt?
Yeah. So, okay, should we do the anecdote? I've got 2 anecdotes. One is from the Quarry story, and one is from the Mulder's Drift.
Let's go.
In the Quarry case, which is the serial murder case we've covered on this show before, he killed numerous, I think, how many people? I forgot now, 16, 17 people are in and around Centurion. I testified as the last witness, and I testified about the linkage analysis, linking all of these cases together, because only about half of them did we have, DNA or a cell phone we recovered. And as I get off the witness stand, he says to me, I walk past him because he's where he's sitting and where I have to go back to the gallery, and he kind of moves up towards me, because we chatted often, so I didn't think anything strange of that. Puts out his hand and says, "Thank you very much for all of your evidence." And I'm like, well, you're very, very welcome. I don't know if he understood where we were going with this. And I don't know if it was then or when after he was finally sentenced, where he said to me, "Will you come to the prison and help me write my book?" I said, well, sorry, I don't think I've got time for that. So that's just an interesting, quirky event. We've had the Mulder's Drift serial rapist, which we've also covered in this case, where the legal aid guy, he wasn't legal aid. He turned down legal aid to pay for private counsel, which is a dumb move. And the private counsel, one day when we were taken in German for lunch, came up to me and said to me, Dr. Labuschagne, where are you going now that it's lunchtime? And I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the mall to go grab something to eat because Krugersdorp Court didn't have a little cafeteria. And he said, okay, would you mind buying me some lunch? Now, I thought he was just, like he's going to consult with his client. He doesn't have time to go. He'll give me the money. He'll pay me back. No, he wanted to know if I could go and buy him some lunch. So I did, because there's, having a good working relationship with the legal counsel on the other side, that's worth it. So I bought him a little lunch there.
What did you get?
I think there's like a toasted sandwich or something, nothing fancy. It was like a pick and pay type of thing that I went to. So you're not exactly getting, T-bone steak.
And the book, I mean, you did cover that case in your book, though, didn't you? In your first book, I think, Quarry Case. Did you not think, okay, I'm doing the book, I should go and take him up on the offer to do a couple of additional interviews and flesh out that chapter?
And, to get access to him in prison would have been a huge hassle.
Well, that's actually a good question. I mean, because I'm going to preempt a question that's coming up from somebody who's been watching from the chat. How, when it comes to access for things like that, is that something that the correctional service are willing to consider, giving you access to somebody once they've been put away for that kind of purpose, to document their case, to work on something like a book?
How I would do that, since I'm not going to film anything, audio or film it video, I would probably just go and visit him as a visitor in prison and say, hey, okay, this is what I'm doing. Are you happy? Can I come back again? Because he can control who comes to see him, because he has a limited number of visits, typically, etc. And he might say, no, bug you. I don't want to chat to you. I want to speak to my family. So that's one way of doing it, or write him a letter if you can get the address. Yeah. Hopefully you can send one back and say, yes, come and see me. And I think that's what Janine Lazarus did, I think, when she did her book about the Norwood guy. I think she just kind of went to visit him. But filming, like we've often wanted to do, is like, oh, man, that's just like a nightmare of a process if that's going to be allowed.
We must get Janine on the show, actually, because we had it was very early on when we were filming the documentaries that we interviewed Janine. Probably one of our first guest interviews we ever did back in like 2001. And, it was quite...
2021.
It was quite incredible because, she recounted the whole story to us in detail, and then was so affected by it emotionally, that process of recounting the whole story. It moved her, clearly, moved her a lot, just kind of reliving that whole experience in front of camera. Look, I think it's one thing next year we must try to figure out, because, I've kind of, after filming all the documentaries, I was like, it's just hard to crack that one, to get, past the gates with a camera and start to. So I think on my to-do list, on my bucket list for next year, is to see if we can make some strides in. Can we start getting access to some folks? Is there a way that I was just watching on YouTube this afternoon an interview with the son of Sam, and they're like sitting in the like, it might as well have been in a podcast studio. I think it looked like it was in a podcast studio, but it was so casual, and there were a couple of hosts, and they were interviewing him like the guy was out. So it'd be lovely if we could do that kind of thing with some of our South African cases, but worth exploring. The question I was going to pose, and we will wrap up our conversation, was from Blue Stone Bison. And the question was, how do we get one of your books signed, Gerard? How do we get a signed book these days? Are we going to have to figure out a way to do
difficult
that?
one. I'll have to. I'm planning to come back to South Africa for a visit in the middle of next year. So maybe we should pre-order some books, have them delivered, and then I can at least sign. I mean, it wouldn't be able to put people's names on unless we knew beforehand. I could put your name on it.
That's a good idea.
Or
if you happen to be in Canada.
Yeah. Or if you're willing to pay for postage here and back, because I've been sending things just a document. Like I had to send one letter to England for something, and they wouldn't let me email it. And one letter, one sheaf of paper, cost $50 to DHL. Unfortunately, postage is a real thing.
Well, look, we'll see. I mean, let's put that on the to-do list as well, is to figure that out. Because again, I've been promising that. Look, we've been in a little bit of a holding pattern with the podcast, with this whole court case going on, just maintaining the weekly as best as we can. But we do have a lot on the to-do list, and hopefully a little break over Christmas, a little bit of time to recharge the batteries, and then to put some of our plans in place. Starting to get some merch and a little store together where we can offer your book. I can figure out a way to kind of ship a bunch to you, get them signed, get them back here, and we can distribute them from this side. I think it's definitely something that we need to explore. Just let's wrap up tonight's discussion. Any final comments on that?
You asked, yeah.
Yeah.
You said about what's some final tips.
Yes.
You don't have to be the most experienced person. The fact that someone else has got 5 more years than you have doesn't mean that he's the better expert. You just have to have enough expertise to do that task at hand. Some tasks at hand that you're requested to do might be very simple and straightforward. Was the person suffering from depression? That any psychologist who's qualified could do. To do a psychological autopsy, that's something a bit more specialized. So you don't have to be the most experienced person. We all started somewhere. What makes you an expert is not how many times you've testified in court. It's what brought you to court in the first place. You've been doing a certain type of work. You've had a certain training. So it's not like the guy who's been testifying 10 times more than you is going to be more seen as more of an expert. No, he just has more evidence, testimony than you. Be honest. Know what you've been asked to do. Can you do it? Is it within your skill set? And but for God's sakes, go get supervision before you even start. I have people who come to me at the end when they've done their report and they say, can you have a look at this report before I submit it to the lawyer? And I'm like, oh my God, you should never have taken this job in the first place. Get supervision at the beginning when you're approached by a lawyer from someone who knows what they're doing and say, look, this is the request. How should I approach it? What should I say yes to? What should I say no to? How do I streamline this request to make sure I don't get in trouble? What should I charge? What should my timelines be? What should I remember to? What's my informed consent document going to look like for the lawyer and for the person I'm assessing? Get supervision. This is not a place where you want to mess up because you'll mess up in a very public way in the courtroom. So honest, get supervision, and that's even the key issues for me.
Okay. Well, guys, if you have any more questions and comments on this subject, please do post them on the episode and we will address them in the future. I've got a question from Shelley. I can't remember when you joined SAPS. Were you part of the Jesus Killer investigation in Cape Town 2007? Love to hear more on it.
I was actually played a very small role. Jonathan Morris, who was the investigating officer, who's a phenomenal investigating officer, recently retired and released his book. So definitely get Jonathan Morris's book. He was a lead investigator. We came down, myself and Colonel Delong came down. We GPSed a lot of the scenes. We looked at some of the information. But I really, compared to other cases, our role was really minimal in that particular investigation. But so we did think about getting Jonathan to come and speak about his book, and that was definitely a case that. He never had Jesus tattooed anywhere, if I recall correctly. They said he had Jesus tattooed somewhere on his lip. Okay. Not happening. Anyway, but yes, I was a little bit, yes.
I once went, I remember very vividly going to a nightclub in London when I was 17, and I finished school young, and I went to do a gap year in the UK, and my first experience of like a proper rave in London, I'm standing in the queue with very flamboyant people in the 90s, but I'll never forget there was one guy that had some very nasty words and Jesus on his forehead, which I thought, that's, even a hat didn't cover that one. Shelley says, maybe ask Dr. Peter Groenewald if he wants to extend his bakery franchise to filming. Okay. Yeah. Would you consider a live in-person podcast with audience when you visit SA? Julian, this is an interesting one because, it's something actually, I've got a whole concept for this to kind of extend the profiler offering as well. This kind of, our idea is wine and crime, that we do hosted live evenings where you do taste beautiful bottles of wine and get to experience experts giving their incredible PowerPoint presentations and talking about cases they've worked on, from profilers like yourself to forensic pathologists and experts from around the crime sphere. So it's definitely something that is in our minds. Again, it's just a case of, unfortunately you get so caught up in just the daily grind of work and what have you. And we haven't quite gotten the podcast. we haven't gotten the podcast to the point where it's kind of a core part of our working week. So, hopefully these things, let's all cross our fingers or let's not cross our fingers. Let's work hard and put the positive energy out there that next year will be the year to tackle some of these things. And Gillian, if you've got any ideas, reach out. Info@Profiler Africa. What am I? Profiler Africa info@gmail.com. There it is. Profiler Africa info@gmail.com. Reach out.
And Gillian, if you're there and you're co-hosting, I'll definitely do it. As I said before, I used to have a journo crush on Gillian Dugouveia. So.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, I find that doing reports in general is know your scope and stay in your lane. Don't stray and stay on the facts. That sounds like some... And then wine and crime like sip and paint. That's it, yeah. Yeah, we'll paint the theater while we're there, wherever we do it. All right. So thanks, Gerard. It's been a great one. We've pretty much covered all the questions for tonight. I did have some from the group and what have you, but I'll save those for another time. Maybe one of the questions we can do, one of the episodes we can do over Christmas is just a pure Q&A, responding to some of the questions that people have posed. I will just quiz you for an hour, and we can do a special episode like that.
We'll have Christmas hats on or something.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do a Christmas Q&A. What have you got lined up for the next week? What's going on there with you? What are you busy with? What are you looking forward to?
This was an office week. I'm trying to think quickly. Meetings. Next week, I'm doing some psychopathy checklist training with Dr. Stephen Hart, who is one of the studied under. If any of you know psychopathy and you've gone into that field, you'll know a guy called Robert Hare or Bob Hare. And Bob Hare wrote a book, Snakes and Suits, amongst other books, American, but then Canadian academic. And he developed the psychopathy checklist, the PCLR. And that's like the gold standard for assessing psychopaths. Now, Stephen Hart, who's my current boss, was actually one of his students that helped him develop the PCLR. And then Stephen later on developed the psychopathy checklist screening version. So Stephen is presenting this training at the Simon Fraser University next week for 2 days to some people, and I've done the course before by him when he was in South Africa many years ago, but I'm going to be kind of, as part of my own train the trainer kind of vibe, I'm going to be doing that next week, so I'm looking forward to that. And then from the 19th, I'm off for 2 weeks and don't know what the hell I'm going to do, but I'm off.
Do you know what you can do?
No, tell me, Paul. I'm almost scared to ask this.
You can make you can make a snowman, Gerard. This could be a Christmas that you can make a snowman.
If it snows in Vancouver, yes.
Is it snow over Christmas there in Vancouver? Is it a snowy spot? Is it?
They might get
rain?
Like 1 or 2 days, but I think it tends to turn to slush very quickly and freeze because it's usually rainy here, so it's not the right temperatures. Whereas the mountains, literally, I can look and see mountains on the edge of Vancouver, on the sort of edges around it, where they have ski resorts, and you'll see snow. But in Vancouver, the city, because it's warm current, seaside, just gets rainy.
Oh, here's a good one. Julian's got another. Julian's throwing out all the good stuff here. Do a group Teams broadcast for Christmas. Then the audience can interact on video. That's an idea. I don't see why that's not a great idea, because I've actually been meaning to integrate Zoom. It might have to be a group Zoom, but we'll figure that out. I'm going to look into that, Gillian. I'll put it on the to-do list as well. Yeah, like I say, I mean, hopefully we can find a way to make all our plans come true in 2026 rather. I think we've had a good year, though. I mean, if you consider, Gerard, this time last year, we'd really just started doing the podcast seriously in video every week. Up until that point, we'd been doing kind of sporadic audio podcasts. And considering we've grown from, I think we were roughly 2,000 subscribers then, and now we're up over 30,000. It's been a pretty good year for Profiler Africa. And we'll certainly make sure we have some episodes to keep everyone entertained over Christmas. But I think we've also earned a bit of a break. So that we can recharge and get some good ideas going and get some of these ideas prepped for next year and see if we can figure out how to make them a reality. Thanks, Gerard, as always.
And also these sort of general topics as opposed to a case, we're never sure how those go down. So we weren't sure how people would think about this, an episode like this. And maybe sometimes we need to just surprise ourselves.
No, I love this chat. I mean, I look forward to hanging out with you on a Tuesday, and this one I thoroughly enjoyed. These ones tend to do, we tend to do better viewership-wise from the single story cases, cases that also people are familiar with a little bit. But guys, I urge you to share and to spread the word on these types of topics that we cover, because there is a lot of information you can glean out of them, because Gerard has been an expert witness a lot, folks. Thanks, Gerard. We'll be back again next week with another episode. Did we decide what we're going to do next week?
Oh, I've got that training all of a sudden, so I'm not going to be around. So we'll have to
what
either
case,
see
though?
if,
I think we'll do a pre-record for
we
next
can get
week,
a
then.
guest. Oh, pre-recorder.
Yeah, let's do a pre-record
see.
for next
I'm not
week,
sure.
and we'll figure it out. All right, Gerard, thanks very much. It's been awesome as always. Thank you, everyone, for watching and for tuning in. Do hit the like and subscribe. Drop us a mail at profilerafricainfo@gmail.com if you'd like to tell us anything or ask us anything. And we will see you again, same place here on the YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you enjoy the show from, we will catch you again next week. Thank you very much, folks. And trust nobody. Trust nobody. Gerard, I don't know if I might be trusting you more than I like, Gerard.
In a country where 83 people are murdered every day, knowing the minds of killers isn't curiosity, it's survival. Subscribe to Profiler Africa now. It's free. Or become a member and help keep the channel alive. Remember, trust nobody.